Hey friends, welcome to Sassy AFTV Season 2, Episode 11, How Change Really Happens. This week's interview is timely, considering the changing pace of our world right now, day by day. I am thrilled to offer you this inspirational conversation with Sierra Melcher, international speaker and author. Sierra calls herself the integral woman, and we talk about what it means to truly go within and understand who you are at your core. She talks about how to consider your self-identity and how that shift can happen day by day. Sierra encourages us to each be the author of our own lives and recognize that we are designed to love, learn, and grow. As Sierra says, human connection is the basis of everything, and considering our current global state, I couldn't agree with her more. Thank you for showing up for you and being here with us this week. Welcome back to another episode of Sassy AFTV. I am Hallie Avolio, and I'm super excited to bring you this week's special guest, Sierra Melcher, all the way from Colombia. You probably can say that with a way better accent than I can, right?
No, you smashed it. That was great. Colombia.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Well, I think you're my first guest from that part of the world, which is super exciting. And I'm still in awe of the fact that technology can bring us all together in this way. It's like you're sitting in my living room next to me, Sierra, and yet we're thousands of miles away. How cool is that?
It is amazing. It's magic. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for being here. I know we connected just a few months ago, and our initial conversation, I feel like we could have just talked forever and ever because we had so many aligned concepts and passions and ways that we want to help other people. And I absolutely love how your business and your persona is all about this idea of the integral woman. So tell us about yourself, tell us about the integral woman, and share with us who you are.
Yeah, thanks. I could go on forever, but I'm going to be as short as I can and to the point. And then if you need more information, ask. How's that?
Perfect.
That good?
Sounds great.
So my personal journey actually guided me to this concept of the integral woman by actually being out of alignment with that. Sometimes it's the things that aren't working that show us what needs to come about. So for years, I didn't feel like I was connected with myself. I didn't really even know who I was. I knew who I projected myself to be and my roles in the world and the things that I thought I was supposed to believe and do. But that's just a facade, right? I was really well acquainted with the facade, and there had been no attention to the internal, who was I if I wasn't my job? Who was I if I wasn't living in that town or related to that person? The things in our external life can crumble or change and shift. And I didn't want my identity to be built on the external. And so that guided me back to this question of who am I? Mm. And I knew I wasn't the only woman who had this question, or had this discrepancy between being whole. So integral has two meanings: being whole within yourself, mm-hmm. and then being integral to the larger community. So actually being involved and being critical and important in the community, in the society, in the world. And there is a shift going on where women are really transforming the way they show up in themselves, but the way they show up in the world. And so I loved this double play of meaning of integral. So mm-hmm. An integral woman knows who she is, she knows what she wants, and she has the courage to try. No guarantees of the outcome, but she has the courage to try. And all the work that I've been doing since I founded this business, and actually even before that guided me to this mission, is to reconnect, support myself and support other women to really reconnect with who they are. Mm-hmm. Because human connection is the basis of everything. It's the basis of every relationship. It's the basis of every business. It's the basis of all of our human existence. Yet I have this image that our exteriors are bumping into other people's exteriors. So my facade is dating his facade, but there's no actual connection if the individual isn't connected with oneself, then there's no potential for actual intimacy or vulnerability or authenticity, which there's so much talk of these things in the world.
Right.
But if we're all just faking it, my faking it is playing with your faking it. What is that? And it's leading to this increasing sense of isolation and loneliness. Yes, you and I are sitting in a living room together, sharing with multitudes of other people also in that living room. Yet, and we have this sense of connection, but if we're not able to drop down into ourselves, it can just get lost.
Oh, I love that, Sierra. And I can 100% relate to that question of who am I? And, who am I because I choose to be her, not who am I because of these external influences, good, bad, or indifferent, created this image of who I am, what my life should look like, what path I should follow, etc. And I know
that choice, right?
That choice.
So many women don't know that they even have the choice. They think they're stuck or locked into, I am who I said I was last week, or who I agreed to be 20 years ago, or,
right.
And that's not expansive.
Right. But I love this imagery that you're creating with this facade, especially the facades, bumping into one another, and alignment, right? We talked about that the last time that we spoke, and these words are tossed around, like you said, authentic, alignment, vulnerability. But how do you teach women to really tap into that part of themselves? Because it's one thing to say, oh, I'm being my authentic self. But are you really? And
no, that's just part of my facade. Right. I have this vulnerable, authentic self that I've just projected on social media. Isn't it beautiful?
Look how authentic I am. I am authentic and I am vulnerable. Here I am. And I'm like, but are you?
It's so well crafted. My vulnerability is so perfected. Yeah.
Look how curated everything is. But the reality is, when we're raw and vulnerable, then we can have this deeper connection, not only to ourselves, but to other humans, men or women. But if we don't allow ourselves the space, like you said, to be vulnerable and to really be raw in whoever we are, whatever that looks like, then how can we even get there? So talk to us a little bit about that, and how you teach that important message.
Yeah. And I'm really glad that you brought that up, because it's one thing, like we could just talk theoretically about the whole thing and be adding to the outside, right? Adding to the exterior. So it's been a really interesting process for me personally. I used to be a teacher, like a high school teacher. Mm-hmm. And so I approached this work from that same pedagogy of like, I've got to figure it out and draw a map for people. And I have to know who they are and guide them to that. But that's not the case. And what I've learned and love even more is every single person is the expert or has the capacity to be the expert on themselves. What the work that I do, I guide people to what I call their inner authority. Mm-hmm. Because the root of the word authority is author. So you're the person who's writing your own life. Mm. And I think you named it earlier, of this matter of choice, asking these questions. Who have I been presenting myself to be? How does that feel in my mind and in my body? I always start every women's circle I do, every group that I do, introduce yourself, but don't tell us where you're from, what you do, who you sleep with, how long you're going to be here, because I don't want to know your elevator pitch, because that's not who you are. And by starting with that, it usually actually is quite startling. How would you, Hallie, how would you introduce yourself if you weren't this?
Right.
And that's a fantastic question, but I also then follow it up with, and you don't have to be that same thing tomorrow.
I love that. Oh.
Because we get ourselves identity. We build this little box for ourselves. We try to make it like the prettiest box possible, but it's still a really little box. And we try to put ourselves in that box because there is some security of having, well, I'm so-and-so, I do this, I'm secure because I've just defined myself. And now you are going to help me hold myself into this tiny little cage that I've just made. However, there's more security when we can relax into and explore the matter of choice and rewriting our story and evolving our identities as we go. And instead of investing so much of our attention and really security in the external stuff. So, okay, my career crashes and burns, not just my job, but my career crashes and burns. Do I freak out because I'm no longer, I thought I was my career, or my marriage or my relationship, tanks? We have so much trouble with those changes that are pretty guaranteed one way or another. Something in our lives is going to go super sideways. And it's really hard if we haven't created that underlying foundation of who I am in addition to all of these things. So to really answer the question, it's by asking a lot of questions. I don't have the answers for my clients. I have the questions. What I do is I support each person and each group to ask themselves again and again, to really connect in a moment, connect with their bodies, because that, as much as we're into this external, we're also into this like intellectual. And so we can craft our physical being to be a certain way, to represent who we want ourselves to be. But that's not truly connected to our bodies, right? Like that's not the spirit connected with this container and the interaction and the communication between the body and the mind and the spirit. Sometimes it's as easy as just taking a breath. Right?
Absolutely.
It actually is. Like if you and I now just do this, and if anyone listening, stop doing everything else that we're doing, just a breath. Did you feel anything shift in your body just in that moment?
Yeah. I mean, for me, whenever I do that, whenever I pause and I create this space of stillness, it just, my whole being feels calm, and I feel recentered, as though I can take on whatever the next thing is that I want to take on.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's such an amazing piece of fuel, right? I think so many of us, we're also chasing, right? We're just like running so fast and running so hard that it's so easy to get lost from ourselves. But it's also so easy just to come back and come back and come back. It's like a muscle that if you don't flex, won't work. But little by little, you can also, you took 5 breaths on purpose today, you would have, physiologically done a lot of things for your physical well-being, but opened up this space for you to really connect with yourself and who am I? Because then when we know who we are and we're not deluded by the facade that we've created, then every choice that we make is coming from that inner place, that inner authority, rather than, oh, what would that person do? Who's me, right? What would my doppelganger, who is this person I'm pretending to be, what would that person do?
Right.
What does she really think? What does she want? No, because I know I used to make choices based on what I thought that image that I'd been creating wanted, or what I thought other people thought they wanted from her, well, there's so much lost in there. So it's asking yourself questions, connecting every time you make a choice. And we make so many choices, right? We choose what we eat and where we go and how we spend our time and how we fill our calendar and what we watch and everything is a choice. And it's easy to think, oh, I can't have any of these choices. None of these are my choices. It's happening to me. but we started this call. You said, how am I? I said, I'm tired. Who made me tired? I did. Right. And if I know that, I can shift how I feel about that, or I can shift how I got there.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I got a busy calendar, change your calendar, or just be okay with how you got there. So change comes for all of us. And whether change comes from the exterior or we want to drop down into getting closer connected to ourselves so we can really have that connection with others.
Mm-hmm.
Change is like part of the deal, one way or another, right? Whether we're instigating it or just waiting for it to come and find us.
Right.
It happens. And so this brings me to the book that I've just written called How Change Really Happens, Unexpected Tools of Transformation. And we go into things with stories about who we are, stories about how the world works and how we should be appearing. And my book is trying to shift a little bit that perception of who you are to give a little bit more clarity, but also how change really happens. Thus, how change really happens. And I use a lot of references from nature and like, does a plant grow the same way you're trying to get your business to grow? No. Are you encountering struggle because you're trying to force something that isn't really natural? The first half of the book is some stories looking at nature to give a new perspective of change, whether it's your internal change. You're like, I want to reconnect with myself and figure out who this creature really is.
Can I would love to jump in here, Sierra, and just address the word change, because I love what you're saying about this. And I have this notion that change often conjures up this fear in a lot of people.
Absolutely.
They hear the word change and they think, oh, nope, I can't change. That's too scary. I don't like change. But I love this, how you're sharing about plants change. They start as a seed or a sapling and they grow a little bit, right? And they go through a process, as do we as humans, right? So can you address this change concept as it relates to embracing change versus having fear of change?
Yeah. And I'm really glad you brought that up, because we have this contradictory experience about change, right? Terrified of it, but I still want to be different, right? It's, I don't want change, but I also don't like how I am. I want to be different, but I don't want to experience any of the results of things being different. And so, of course, this causes conflict, which is one of the reasons I wrote the book, because I work with people in transformation and there's just all of that unpacking that needs to happen. And most of us are preventing that progress because of that confusion. So one of the ideas I present in the book is this idea of growth. We are human. We are designed to live, learn, and grow. And as little people, we're really good at that. We're okay with falling down and getting up and falling down again. As big people, we're not so good at that. And we really struggle with struggle. So people will have crises, or whether they're internal or external, something changed and I don't know what to do. I'm now on all sorts of uncomfortable when I used to be comfortable and I don't know why. And we call this a breakdown or a crisis. And then like change, we have all these meanings about what that means, right? Oh my God, if I'm having a breakdown, that means that I'm crazy and then my life is falling apart. We impose all this extra meaning on the story that we are telling about what's happening to us or for us. And so I've been introducing this idea. It's not a breakdown, or a breakdown isn't as bad as you think it is. We want the the light, oh my gosh, I figured it out. We want the breakthrough. We want to sort of skip the breakdown, but there is no separation. It is a breakdown through. That the breakdown is a necessary stage towards the next thing. And so folks who are afraid of change have two choices. We are human, and so we love the familiar. Mm-hmm. Even if the familiar itself involves discomfort, right? A lot of us will choose to stay in familiar discomfort in a job, in a relationship, in a town, whatever. In the identity that you've crafted, we'll say this is uncomfortable, but I know exactly how to operate in this discomfort. That's fine. If the discomfort doesn't exceed your desire, if your discomfort is a low discomfort, okay, I'm never going to tell anybody, hey, I think it's time for you to change.
Right.
That's not my job. Change will come and tell you when it's time, right? Mm-hmm. When you are so uncomfortable that you're willing to step outside of that familiar, you're like, okay, yep, I'm going to go towards this uncomfortable, unfamiliar, right? And not everybody needs to change. But when it comes, if you have this concept that this is living, this is learning, this is growing, this is what I was designed to do, I'm meant to expand into the next chapter. Of course it's terrifying. Of course it's unfamiliar. But I navigated the last chapter, and it was new and terrifying once. I mean, everyone's gone to school, first day of school, everyone's graduated from something, and that's exciting, but also terrifying. We're going to have this. It comes in cycles. Like our life has seasons, and we can resist. A lot of us do. We resist that when that natural season has come. It's like, okay, we're ready for this next thing, but we're like, no, thanks. I'm just going to stay uncomfortable in my familiar. Thank you very much. Okay, that's fine. But there's going to be more and more invitations that become more and more uncomfortable, whether it's emotional pain or physical pain or something. This is pain as an opportunity. It's a nudge. It's an invitation towards what is the next thing that you want to become.
Right.
And that's it.
I think that it's, embracing this expansion. I actually really love that word, and you've used it several times. And I think it's a great way to look at it because, change can be really, the word in and of itself can indicate that you have to be, you start here and you have to go here. But instead of thinking of it as it's one or the other or something that's mutually exclusive, it's this expansion of who you are and what you want to be and what your identity is, right? So like you said in the beginning, when somebody shares how they're feeling in a particular day, it might be completely different tomorrow or the day after or how it was a week ago. And that's completely fine. It doesn't mean that you have changed as a person. And if you want to go through a transformation, that's awesome. But also, I feel like expansion of self is a huge part of just day-to-day existence, but acknowledging that, embracing it, and really surrendering to who we are and to the external environments around us, and not living in this fear space of, ooh, I feel something that feels different than it did yesterday. So now I'm putting up a block and a wall because I'm fearful. Right.
Yeah. And that just holds us back. And it can feel, it's maybe feels safer in the moment, but it's toxic. It really is toxic in our minds and in our bodies to be so tight and hold so fiercely to what has been. And this idea of suéltala, like just, so that's sometimes speak in Spanglish, but we just have to let it go and relax into who you are becoming and who you can become. it's an interesting process. It does involve discomfort and fear. Learning and growing
and courage.
is inherently, yeah. I mean, it's part of the experience. There's a quote that I have been repeating often because it's been really coming up in a lot of conversations. So Joseph Campbell was a famous mythologist, and he says, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek."
Ooh, that's a good one.
It's a really good one.
That's a really good one.
It's when we're like, oh, I don't know my next, fill in the blank, my next job, my next town, my next partner, or my next self. Like, what's my next relationship with myself going to be like? I don't know. But the treasure that I'm looking for, the love, the acceptance, the fulfillment, the connection, where is it? It's not like lying out on the sidewalk. It's in there.
Right.
It's in the fear. And once you go in there, you're like, oh, is this all I was afraid of?
Right. It takes away the uncertainty.
Yeah.
100%.
Fear has power as long as you don't walk towards it. But if you're like, oh, let's go.
I'm in. Break it out.
Let's go towards this breakdown through. Let's get into the mess.
Right.
You're like, oh, okay. Look, I found the treasure. Look, I found the breakthrough.
Well, and I love the imagery of saying, thank you, fear. Thank you for showing up and protecting me, but I'm good. See you later.
Because that changes the resistance. It doesn't empower the fear. If fear shows up and says, oh, be afraid. And you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to lock down. You've just given fear a blank check.
Totally.
If you've just said, okay, I hear you. I really appreciate that you're on my team and you're looking out for me, because there are some things that I do need my fear for, right? There are occasionally dark alleys and some planes, I could jump out of. There's some times where I need the fear to not die. But most of the fear that we're experiencing in the 21st century is not life or death.
Right.
It is, growth or death.
Right.
Fear. Right?
Absolutely.
So
no, I think that's great. And, I'd love to come back. I'd love to come back to this idea that you talked about in the beginning when you start your women's circles and you ask people, how are you? Right? Or who are you? Introduce yourself. Yeah. And this reminds me of a conversation I had with a friend who did a short work. She had a work opportunity that took her to Finland. And she said that in Finland, people don't identify themselves as, where they live and what their occupation is. And when you say, how are you doing or who are you, it's more about what their hobbies are and what their passions are and what fuels them. And I thought that was such a cool concept when she shared that with me, and obviously very culturally driven. And so I've been really thinking about that a lot when I meet new people, and just going back to this idea of really providing, tactical information as we're looking inward and as we're understanding who we are, what our inner self is, what our inner authority is about. Can you give any tips maybe on how one might think about herself and express that the next time she meets somebody new or has an opportunity to introduce herself?
Yeah. It's actually been a really interesting litmus test of the people that we want to connect with. If you're about to have one of these, I'm going to introduce myself, elevator pitch conversations, and you say, hang on, actually, I don't want to do it that way. I want to talk about who I really am. If someone's like, oh, cool, let's do it, then you already know something really valuable about the person that you're with. And if someone's like, I'm from da 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 da, and no, then you already know if that person's willing to go there with you or not, which I find to be one of the most important pieces of information. Cool. So just naming hey, let's just do this a little differently. It is tricky because so many people are used to just saying the same thing over and over again. And I wouldn't recommend, doing this in every situation, but most of the time, I don't make a big deal of it. I just say how I'm feeling rather than who I am or what I do. One of the things, so I've been working with a speaking coach, and she says, if you're giving a public speech, the best way to really connect with the audience is to start with a belief statement. Of like, what do I believe? Here's me and what I believe. And then the people who are like, yeah, me too. You're already connected. It doesn't matter what your hobbies are or your career is or where you're from. We've found our people. And then conversations just bloom out of the wilderness when you start with something that connects you. Whereas I find sort of like giving the resume bullet points that just in 3 minutes, it allows somebody to put you in a box. Mm-hmm. Right? I've put myself in a box and I want you to put me in a box. And it's this sort of chicken pecking order of like, right. I want you to respect me and think that I'm great, but put me in a box.
Right.
I'm not inviting a deeper exploration of what it means to be alive right now.
Right.
So even asking and starting with that belief statement.
That's cool.
Like, this is my name and this is what I believe,
That's awesome. And one of the things that I love to talk about, as you know, is affirmations, right? And I really love to talk about affirmations in the sense of I am identity statements. So, absolutely. And we all are lots of different identities, as we've talked about. And having that list that you keep adding to, that evolves, that changes day to day of I am, and then fill in the blank, and really creating that imagery for yourself of who you are in any given moment. And some days you might be one person and other days you might be another person, but having even that self-talk, even that 3-minute introduction to yourself each day.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Hi, nice to meet me.
Yeah. Nice to meet me today. Today I am, today I am this, today I am tired. Today I am strong and powerful. Today I have a shit ton of things to do, but I am feeling energetic and awesome, whatever, right? I mean, all of the things.
One of the things that I've really appreciated about living in Colombia is as another culture and another language. So Spanish has 2 words for I am.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right? There's yo soy, which is like I am, something that's not going to change. Like I'm female, pretty like I'm going to stay this way probably, right? But then estoy is like I feel, it's like I am happy. Mm-hmm. But it's something that can come and go. And so in the language, they've built in the things that are permanent and the things that are impermanent. But in English, if you say I'm angry, there's no distinction in that verb. So maybe I'm always angry. Right. As opposed to I feel angry in this moment, or I feel elated. Because in English, we just use I am elated instead of I feel elated. Right. But that distinction between what is permanent, who are you all the time, and what are you experiencing in this moment, I really appreciate. It's just built into the language. When I was learning Spanish, I had to really think of like, is this a permanent state or a temporary state?
Oh, interesting.
I don't know. Because I would just translate I am, yo soy, but like, sí, yo soy feliz, I'm happy. Does that mean I have to be happy all the time? Or do I need to change the verb that I'm using to express this thing? So I just really appreciate your mention of, the culture in Finland, how they speak. The language in Spanish creates a distinction that I feel in English we really benefit from, just recognizing what is the fluid experience of my identity as opposed to the rigid experience of my identity.
Right. That's awesome. No, I love that. And in fact, it reminds me of one of my dear friends, Mary Allison Brown. She's a therapist and a coach, and she talks about stress and how to avoid stress. But she talks about, instead of using the words literally, I am stressed, it's I feel stress, right? Because you might feel stress in the moment, exactly what you're saying, but are you stress itself? No, of course not.
No.
So,
and if you say that you are, like,
then you are.
If you say that you are, you are.
Absolutely.
And so this is one of the most amazing things to me as we practice changing the story. Again, like I am the author of my own life.
Oh, I love that.
The words that come out of my mouth are true. I am writing my story, whether I mean to be and I'm doing it intentionally, or I'm doing it unconsciously and just repeating what I've always been saying. You could be like, I'm a business person and I'm stressed and this and that. And like, okay, well, you've just locked yourself into a story that I don't want to be a part of, right? Like, and especially folks who are complaining about who they are and how they are, like, cool, but there's some capacity in there. There's something about it that you're attached to, and you can't change that story until you can look and say, how has this story been serving me?
Right.
How has this identity served me in the past? And am I ready to change that? Am I ready to let some of that go and not reject it, right? Not reject the fear, not reject how we have been. Look at it straight in the eye and say, oh, wow, yeah, that really kept me safe, or that really helped me get to this point. But now I'm ready for something else. And that gives us permission and opens up this possibility of becoming.
Right.
And it's subtle, it's slow. A lot of it's really subtle, this change. That's the other part that makes change possible. And it's in the book too. It's like, don't go big. If you're going to do change, don't go big.
I like it.
It will freak you out. Go small.
Right. Small, consistent results.
That's it.
Small, consistent actions over time equal radical results. That's what I was trying to say. That's my favorite quote from The Compound Effect.
It's so good. Like, trees don't just burst out of the ground, right? You're not like driving down the street and then, oh, there's a tree.
Right.
No, it took 25 years.
Yeah.
But there's a very solid tree. But when we think of change, so many people are terrified of it and they want results like yesterday.
Like right now.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then they don't realize why they're having a hard time adjusting to the result they just got.
Right.
And like sabotage and like break down the whole thing. So it's really fun to get into the nitty gritty and take it apart. And what's different really, it's just very subtle. So it's like a breath. It's what is the smallest thing that you can do today towards your desired outcome.
I love
towards
that.
Checking in with yourself, right? Micro shift. Smallest.
Love it.
Micro shift. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, clearly we all have to read this book and learn more about change and transformation and how to make these micro shifts within ourselves so that we can really embody our inner authority, be our own integral woman, and really encapsulate all these beautiful teachings that you've shared today. So I'm so appreciative of your knowledge and your wisdom and just your general passion and spirit. It's beautiful. And I am so glad that you're sharing. And I, of course, want you to tell everybody where they can find you. But before you do that, and you can work this into it if you need an extra moment, I want to know something that makes you feel sassy and fun.
That's a great question. And I know it's your question. And it's but this is it. This is what you just asked. I'm feeling as an invitation to get to know myself better right now. Right. So I love driving in the countryside and having the wind in my hair.
Ooh.
Yeah. I imagine myself like a dog, like with my head out the window and like the tongue flapping and like just that thrill and just being surrounded by green, windy roads.
I have a beautiful picture of that right now with your hair just like flowing back. I love it. With a big smile on your face.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's one of my favorites. I've never heard that one before in my sassy question. I love it.
Yeah.
That was awesome. And I love I love the invitation to get to know yourself in a new way.
Yeah.
So now I want to invite you to share how everybody else can get to know you.
Absolutely. I'm very present on Facebook. I exist moderately on Instagram, Integral Women Mentoring, all of the above. My website is integral-women.com. I even answer my phone if people call it. I am really happy to connect with folks who are interested in reconnecting with themselves or exploring and navigating through transitions of any kind. That really is my favorite place to be with folks through transition, and watching others really connect with themselves, figure out who they are. It's like watching a birth. It's really fun. So I exist in most social media places, and starting March 24th, I will be on Amazon, and you can find my book just by searching Sierra Melcher or How Change Really Happens on Amazon.
And I'll put links to all of the above, including your book, since it's available now. And we are so excited for you, and just to see, you're blossoming and how much prolific writing you're doing and changing the world in so many beautiful ways, one small step at a time.
Thank you.
I love it. Well, thank you, Sierra, for being here. Thank you for sharing, like I said, your wisdom, your passion, your love, your spirit. So many great tips that you offered. And I'm just really appreciative of your time and your energy. And thank you for being on Sassy AF TV.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Hallie.
Awesome. Thanks for watching. We look forward to seeing you next week. Make sure you tune in each week for a new episode of Sassy AF TV. And you can also listen on the Sassy AF audio experience on iTunes, Spotify, and everywhere else you find your favorite podcasts. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye. Each time I hear this interview, I pick up a new golden nugget. One of my favorite takeaways is what Sierra says at the end about taking small actions each day that move you toward your desired outcome. Sierra's thoughtful and loving approach to humanity is refreshing and encouraging. Thanks again for being here and tuning in for another episode of Sassy AF TV. It would mean the world to me if you would leave a comment and take a screenshot to share it with your tribe on Instagram or Facebook. Don't forget to tag me at Sassy Healthy Fit. Then make sure to head over to sassyhealthy.fit and sign up for our mailing list so you always know the latest and greatest in sassy fun. See you next time.